Happy Halloween, everyone. I'm a photon. Tonight we're going to be talking about photobiomodulation, answering your guys' questions. So, why don't we get started here? So, the first question is somebody asking about the levels. Not quite sure what the levels would mean, but I assume it means, what is the irradiance or power density that you're looking for. So we'll give people a couple minutes here to click in, but happy Halloween, everybody. I'm going to be a photon of light tonight and answering your photobiomodulation questions. So thank you for all that submitted questions. We'll answer them as we go. If you have any other new questions, just drop them down in the box and we'll answer them at the end. But first person's question was about the levels. So what is photobiomodulation, first of all? So how do you use light to modulate your biology? You have to get a panel that has different wavelengths of light, and that's the first thing is what colors of light are you utilizing? Most of the time they're going to be red and infrared. Those are the main wavelengths of light that are used topically. There are some intravenous ones that you can use because certain wavelengths of light don't have enough power, or I should say strength, to penetrate deeply into the skin. So it's mostly going to be red and infrared. So first off, what device wavelengths do you have? Most times it's going to be 660 nanometers, 810 nanometers in the infrared wavelength. Then you're going to want to look at your power density or your radiance. That's going to be measured in something called milliwatts per centimeter squared. So that's essentially like how many photons of light are coming out at you at one time. And for those just logging on, welcome, happy Halloween. I'm a red light panel full of photobiomodulation photons tonight. So, but the radiance is essentially the temperature is one way you can kind of think about it. Is, if you were trying to cook a turkey, would you use a flashlight, which would take forever, or you use a blowtorch? Well, the blowtorch is probably going to incinerate it. So you need to have the right power density. A lot of the panels online are going to say that they're like 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared, standing 6 inches away. That's probably not possible with most devices. They're probably using the wrong meters to measure it. But the good news is that they're probably not in a dangerous zone because you don't want to be that high in the power density. Probably 20 to 30 milliwatts per centimeter squared is the power density that you actually want to utilize. And then you need to know the time. How long do you use the device? It's going to depend on that power density. So you have to look at the manufacturer's recommendations. Most time it's somewhat of a myth that it has to be 6 inches away. That's mostly as a CYA because of the EMFs that potentially come off of the devices from the fans and such. But photobiomodulation is best used with skin contact because, as you can see, the light bouncing off my face right now, it's reflecting. So light can basically do 4 things. The acronym is RATS. The light can reflect, so it bounces off your skin. Approximately 60-65% of the light bounces off your skin when it's red light. The light can be absorbed, and we'll talk about how photobiomodulation works in just a second. It can be transmitted, so for those who've ever had an x-ray, you know that there's a plate behind you. The photons of light and the electrons go through you, and there's a picture on the other side. If you have dense bone, it blocks those wavelengths. So the light can transmit all the way through you, or it can scatter, bounce around. Maybe it gets absorbed, maybe it gets transmitted all the way through. So the acronym is, again, RATS. All right, so next question, somebody's saying, they want to learn everything about photobiomodulation. Well, this is more kind of a Q&A type of situation tonight. If you want to see in my prior talks, my website, redlightdoc.com, has my prior videos, has some other recommendations for some of the devices I personally use. Oops, sorry, lost some photon power here. Let me fire this back up for you guys. Otherwise, the Halloween costume doesn't look as good. All right. Fell out the back. Here we go. So you can see that this is actually a panel that you can use for kind of hair regrowth, which not necessarily what I'm using it for, but it's a flexible panel. You can unzip it, you can lay on it, you can get actual skin contact with it, so the light isn't reflecting as much, but that would look good as a Halloween costume tonight to be a photon. So, but if you want to learn more, go to redlightdoc.com and you'll get some more information. All right. The next question is, how many times a day can you do an 8 to 10 minute session, same or different areas? So So it's going to depend again on what device you're utilizing. But if you have a smaller kind of handheld device, such as like this is the Solvason Bright. This is my portable one that I like to use when I travel. It's also one I tend to use in the morning time. But I like it because it's battery powered, very portable, very good power density, so get good effects with it. But I think there's more of kind of like a spot weld. If you injured your shoulder, you're going to treat your shoulder for 8 to 10 minutes. Then if you jacked up your knee in the gym, you're going to treat your knee for 8 to 10 minutes. So with a smaller device, you can kind of move it around. But if there's nothing that's particularly hurting, just generally recommend people treat their kind of sternum region, activate stem cells with it that way. But you don't want to treat the same area multiple times per day because there is a biphasic response. If you use too much light, you can inhibit the benefits and you lose the benefits. It's rare that you'd have a full-on neuroinhibitory response where you actually injure yourself, but 8 to 10 minutes per site is fine once a day. Next question, how and when to best use it to optimize sleep? Very good question. People do have to play around with these a little bit, and that sometimes using very bright, I shouldn't use the word bright, but very high power and density devices too close to bed can affect some people's sleep, even though there's not blue light coming from this. It's not necessarily affecting your melanocyte receptors, but that bright light can affect your circadian rhythms in ways. So a general blanket statement, most of the time you should be using these devices sun up to sundown. You're using them as a supplement. You're trying to augment the natural wavelengths of light that you're missing out on when you're inside. That being said, the red light does help the mitochondria release melatonin, where a lot of melatonin is produced. It's not just in the pineal gland. So some people will report better sleep using these devices, but most of the time you don't want to be using it too close to bed because it can affect your sleep. The next question, where to buy? It really depends on what you're looking for. On my site, redlightdoc.com, I have a couple affiliate links for some companies that I've personal experience with their devices. In my office, I have multiple EMR Tech devices. I have the huge Firehawk panel. It's 8 foot tall. That's what I utilize to intro patients to photobiomodulation. I have the small Solvason Bright. That's the best kind of portable device that I like right now. I have different Weber devices. I have a Weber LED helmet that's 810 nanometers. I have the Weber Spectra watch. I actually just recently upgraded to their newest laser watch. I'm still waiting for it to be shipped out. It just literally hit the market 2 days ago. So I'm going to look into playing around with that one to see if it has an effect on blood pressure support. Can it boost nitric oxide? So I have some devices in the office that look at endothelial health, pulse wave velocity, central blood pressure. I'm going to start playing around to see can I get those numbers improving it using photobiomodulation on the wrist arteries by putting the photons of light directly into your arterial system. But that is somewhat of a caveat, is you have to work with a company that you can trust, that they're transparent on their specs on their devices. There's a lot of snake oilsmen and kind of shady marketers in the red light space right now. So if you can't ask a question to the owner or it's not fully listed out on the website, what wavelengths of light are they utilizing? Is it 600 nanometers, 660 nanometers? Is it 810, 850? What wavelengths of light are coming off the device? What is the irradiance, the milliwatts per centimeter squared? And ideally, they should be giving you some dosing guidelines, but you really want to focus on, what are you treating, and that'll determine what type of panel or wearable device to get. This kind of piggybacks on to that question. Is there a difference between the brands Joovv versus EMR Tech versus Kala, which I honestly I haven't heard of that particular brand. Yes, there are differences, not on only cost. Sometimes it's actually in quality. Certain devices, particularly Joovv, in my opinion, tend to be pricier for them what they actually are. You can find brands that have even better specs at more reasonable cost. But Joovv is one of the first to markets and has lots of marketing dollars, so you're just going to tend to see them promote it fairly frequently. The EMR Tech, I've known Chris for a couple of years. He's been very supportive about getting the message out about preventive cardiology. I have one of his very large panels in my office, so I just am very biased. I really do like his devices, but he's very transparent. He's very easy to work with. If you have an issue with the device, which personally I've only had one minor issue, and he took care of it very quickly. My patients, if they ever order a device and have questions, he's very quick to get back to them. So that's what I said, is you got to work with the people who design the devices or have a very good reputation in the industry. And it's another question, if it pops up or not. May not pop up on my screen, but it said I have one of the smaller EMR-Techs. What are the use cases for the small versus the big with a fan? Why? How close and long? So, all right. So, I have the FireWave. I've had one for probably 2-3 years now. Great device. I use it for kind of more, like I call it, spot welding. So either treating the sternum or spray and strain. So typically it is between 3 and 6 inches away from that device, and it really depends on what you're treating. But it's generally between 8-12 minutes are most use cases for that. The bigger ones, you just treat more surface at one time. It's not necessarily that they're better, they're just more time efficient if you want to be doing a more full body type of treatment. But they have similar distances and usually similar time frames to stand in front of them. All right. Welcome, Allie. I think your costume beats mine, but I'm a red light panel, red light photon tonight, and answering people's photobiomodulation questions. All right, next question. How close to the lamp, how much time, and how many times daily? So I answered this a little bit in one of the previous questions, but it's somewhat of a myth that it has to be 6 inches away from the device. In most of the trials, they were using lasers and they're using skin contact. Most home devices are not meant for skin contact because of the amount of EMFs that are coming off the devices. So most manufacturers say, well, stand back 6 inches and you're not going to be getting a lot of EMFs from their device then. But as you can see, this light bouncing off my face, 63% of the red light reflects off your skin. So you have to use more time to get the photons of light into the mitochondria where they're actually working. So you need the red and infrared to act on cytochrome C oxidase, kick off nitric oxide from that space, improve electron flow down the electron transport chain, decreasing reactive oxygen species, increasing ATP production. So if the light is further away, you're probably going to need more time to get to the right temperature. Again, it's kind of like cooking a turkey. You can't use a flashlight to cook a turkey, and you can drop a turkey in boiling oil, but is that the best way to do it? No. There's probably a window of time that you're supposed to cook something, and that's essentially how you want to think about light therapy, is what colors of light are you using, what is the irradiance or the power density, that means how many photons are coming out of your light, and the time that you use it. And a lot of good questions tonight about like how many times a day or when to use it. Mostly use it sun up to sundown as the key. You're just trying to augment natural sunlight for the most part. And the time really should be based off what the manufacturer recommends, or read the actual articles and see what were the protocols. There are certain heart protocols which the treatment time is only 2 minutes on the initial day, the next day, and 3 days after the initial event. But they were using a higher powered laser device. So it is going to depend on the device itself. All right, so the question is, there research supporting specific therapy parameters for improved cardiac function? Most of the research has been done in Russia, and a little bit has been in Germany on more of the cardiac utilization of PBM. You have to kind of dig into PubMed to really get the articles, but I've not personally seen any specific parameters for improving ejection fraction with the lights. It's theoretical that the light therapies should help augment mitochondrial function in the myocardium or activate mesenchymal stem cells in the sternum that can help the myocardium. The heart, approximately by weight, is 1/3 mitochondria. So light therapy may help improve relaxation, the diastology of the heart initially. But one of the articles that I frequently comment on when I'm on podcast or giving talks is there was a trial done in Israel on patients suffering ST elevation MIs, worst kind of heart attack, you're going straight to the cath lab, getting a stent. They treated half the patients with photobiomodulation, half the patients got standard of care. The other half also got traditional stenting. They didn't withhold anything, but they added light therapy to the patients by using a laser device directly on skin contact to their tibia, the bone in your legs. They were activating stem cells in the legs. Those patients treated with light therapy at the time of the heart attack, a day later, and I believe it was 3 days later before they got discharged, had smaller excursions of certain cardiac enzymes that are markers of how large the heart attack was. Now, at 9 months, the patients both had the same ejection fraction, so it wasn't a long-lasting effect, but it was proof of concept that there was less heart damage initially when you utilize photobiomodulation. The likely theory is that it's improving stem cell activation. The stem cells are going to the areas of ischemia. Also, there's a systemic effect. You're treating the blood plasma. You're probably improving exclusion zone water, structured water. You're providing energy to the body while there's ischemia to the tissues past the obstruction. All right, I think I might have actually gotten through all the live questions, so let's see what else you guys got for me tonight. So welcome everybody, and happy Halloween. I'm a red photon tonight for Halloween. This thing's actually getting pretty warm. The problem is like making my brain work too fast right now, I think. So somebody's asking a question about the benefit of having near infrared combined with the red light. They both have similar functions inside the mitochondria, mostly activating cytochrome C oxidase, the 4-cytochrome. It helps improve energy flow. The red and infrared light can help expand exclusion zones, improve structured water distance. But the near infrared can penetrate a little bit deeper. So if somebody's doing brain photobiomodulation, typically you'll have to use the 810 nanometers and above wavelengths to be able to penetrate the skull and get to the front parts of the brain. The red light will not penetrate as deeply. All right, so somebody's asking a question about the difference between the COBs, which stands for chip on board, and the LEDs on the EMR-Tech. Use difference also. So the chip on board, essentially, if you've seen the panel that I have at the office, it has these really large globes, and there's, if you stare, kind of look closely at the globe, there's going to be like, I don't know how many there is, probably 15, 20 little, red LEDs inside of it. I personally don't know if there's really that big of a physiologic difference using a chip on board versus just the LEDs that are individualized. I think it's just kind of marketing preferences sometimes. Looks cool. The one I got in the office is has the meridian points for a very large, tall hockey player. So Chris can maybe correct me in the comments sometime, but I don't know if there's a major physiologic benefit of doing the chip on boards versus just plain LEDs. So I don't really make a big difference. Now his smaller panels have the LED rings on the outside, and then the FireWave has a chip on board in the middle. You do have to turn that one on if you're going to actually use it for photobiomodulation. I did get this question in a different platform, saying, do I keep on a red light in my office all day long? Yes, I use just the FireWave, the outer rings. I don't turn on the central board because I'm not trying to do therapy. I'm just trying to light up the room. And today was kind of overcast in St. Louis, so I kept it on all day in the office. Somebody was asking me what my favorite light panel is. I have a lot of them. Again, I have this red light one. I have an infrared one from Weber for brain photobiomodulation. I have a wrist one from Weber. I have their upgraded one coming soon. I've used the CareWear patches, which are red and blue infrared wavelengths of light. The patches, go onto whatever musculoskeletal injury you have, or you can kind of use it like the Weber and put it on your wrist and treat your radial artery. I have the Solbation Bright. That's my kind of portable one that I tend to use in the morning time. And then I have what I call the Beast in the office, the 8-foot tall, 4-foot wide EMR-Tech Firehawk. I also have an Inferno at home that I use in my workout room because I don't work out under blue light. So I have a lot of different uses, but usually recommend people just find one device that they're going to use the majority of the time, and then when they get to be a photo biomodulation geek like myself, you start adding on more devices for whatever particular use case you're interested in. So a question about just using near infrared at night to improve melatonin. I don't think it'd be much different than using red light in the fact that it potentially is still stimulating. I know you can't physically see it with your eyes, but your body still senses it. Yes, near infrared is always present 24/7 outside. The sun heats up rocks and you go outside and it's still warm because the rocks are releasing the infrared back. So it may not be as big of a deal. But again, it's one of those biohacking principles, test, don't guess. So you can use a sleep tracker if you want. I've previously used the Oura Ring and I've used the Whoop Band. Just try to keep them on Bluetooth off mode while you're utilizing them and then download the data the next day. But see, is it affecting your sleep quality if you use it too late? But I always talk about these things being supplements. So ideally you're using them during daylight hours. So somebody's asking, what do you get sunlight in your eyes and on your skin? I don't know what exactly that means per se, but if you're inside, I wear indoor sunglasses. I have multiple different pairs of these blue blockers. I'm just put on the red ones just so I could be a total photon of red light tonight. But typically, when you're outside, you want full spectrum light hitting your eyes and your skin. Your skin is a solar panel. If you cover up your solar panel, you don't get the response. I get that question sometimes, how do I use these red light panels? I'm like, you have to show it whatever skin you want to be treated because the light will bounce off clothing. So outside, you want to get full spectrum light in your eyes and on your skin. You can use these type of panels beforehand to kind of hybrid tanning, a term I learned from Dr. Cruz. You can use the red light therapy to precondition the skin. And this is the reason to go outside at sunrise so that your skin gets all this healing red and infrared wavelengths of light before the UVB comes out later in the day. It's when your skin hasn't been protected by red light in the morning time, you're more likely to burn. So you can use sunlight in a kind of hybrid way with these panels. And if you overdo it, which be smart, but if you overdo the sun and you start getting burnt, you can use these panels to help lower the inflammation, lower the pain. And yes, for the Quantum Health TV people, I was trying to go for the best quantum biology costume of the year. So somebody joined in, was asking a question. I answered a little bit earlier, but I'll go over it again. Is there anything that should be on their checklist when looking to purchase a red light panel or a near infrared panel? The majority of the panels are going to have both red and infrared wavelengths in them. I think that's just a more useful type of device than just a plain red or just plain infrared device. For example, the Soul Basin Bright that I have has a switch on it. I think he was actually first to market that had it, that did this way. I had the original Juve portable, I don't even know what they called it, but it only had red light. So this one, probably blinding my camera right now when I shine it, but you see a row of red, a blank line, red and blank. The blank lines are infrared. You can't see that with your eyes, but your skin can feel it. So it has kind of like a split, 2 and 2. This is all infrared at this point, and then all red. So, both red and infrared work in the mitochondria for the most part. It does have an effect on the water that surrounds your cells as well, but just for tonight's purpose, let's say it's working in the mitochondria. The red light doesn't penetrate as deeply through the surface. The infrared penetrates a little bit deeper, can penetrate into the bones. So if you're trying to treat the brain, you're probably gonna have to use the infrared to be able to penetrate the skull and get into the the first couple layers of the brain tissue. But the person was asking also, what should you look for? One, you always want to look for the wavelengths of light that the device emits. So is it red only? Is it infrared? If it's red, which wavelengths of light? Most panels are going to have 660 nanometers. How much infrared? A lot of times they're going to be 810 nanometers, sometimes 830, sometimes 850. You know, sometimes it's kind of close enough is good enough, but if you have a specific disease that's been studied, you have Parkinson's, you have Alzheimer's, you're going to go to PubMed and look at what devices were actually utilized for those types of use cases, and then try to match up your panel for the wavelengths of light that were actually studied for that use case. Then I really talked about too is the irradiance or the power density. That's essentially how many photons of light are coming out of your device at one time. Is it trickling out like a squirt gun, or is it a fire hose? So they're going to measure in something called milliwatts per centimeter squared. A lot of the panels online are going to say they're 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared. You know, that's a lot of irradiance. They're most likely using a solar meter to measure that, and that meter will falsely elevate the irradiance. I don't remember the exact number, but I believe the sun is like 25 to 35 milliwatts per centimeter squared. So it's unlikely most of these devices that you're 6 inches away are going to be, quote, more powerful than the sun. Now, some of the laser devices that are directly on your skin probably are, but most of the LED ones are probably not. That being said, again, it's a biphasic response. If you don't use the light or use it too little, you get no benefit. You don't actually stimulate the cytochromes enough to get the effect of taking nitric oxide off, improving electron flow, improving ATP, decreasing reactive oxygen species. There's a large sweet spot, but there's definitely, and I can tell you from personal experience, that if you use it too much, you can potentially have an inhibitory response, or at least lose all the benefits of using it. So when people say, hey, that red light panel didn't work, well, did you use it enough? Or were you like a typical guy who hears like 10 minutes is good and does it for 2 hours? You're not going to get what you're expecting. So red light is generally challenging to injure yourself, but you do have to be fairly precise on the dosing. And that is honestly the most challenging thing right now to be able to explain to people, is that when people say, like, well, how long do I use it for? Unfortunately, I have to keep saying, it depends, it depends, it depends. It depends on the device itself. So somebody's asking, does the EMR have near infrared that you can turn off? From the panels that I have, I do not believe so. That's one of the things where the Inferno and the FireWave have them already built in. My huge panel at the office is just one setting for it. All right, so somebody's asking about the V-Light. Lots of research to support it. Some speculate it's not strong enough. Yeah, the V-Light has a couple different models. They have one device that clips to your nose and shines the red, and also infrared up the nose. And they purport that they're treating, the frontal lobes with that. That's where it's a little bit debatable. Does it actually penetrate the skull? It's more likely it's actually doing blood irradiation with those, and you're getting a systemic benefit from that. But they do have some brain photobiomodulation devices that have these different little, like, kind of hockey puck type things that go all around the head. It's pretty intense. I've not ever personally used it, but they have some interesting research definitely for patients with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So if I was suffering from one of those conditions, not a lot of risk for using it, potential benefit on utilizing it. So V-Light makes a decent product, but the nose one alone may not be enough. You probably have to go for the full-on head one, and that's, I don't remember the last time I looked, it's a couple $1,000s to do the full-on kit for that. All right, guys, well, I answered all the questions, and my head is pretty much completely warm now with 30 minutes of red light therapy to my brain. So I'll be signing off here in a minute, but want to hit you with a couple more things. Next Monday night, 6 p.m. Central Time, the first Monday of the month. That's going to be a general Ask Me Anything. If you still have red light questions, happy to answer them, but typically it's going to be more about lipids, cardiovascular screening, what tests to do to not have a heart attack. We'll answer those type of questions. 2, tomorrow, registration closes for my Cancun event. December 1st to December 4th, can be down Cancun for a sun run, charging up the mitochondria with proper sunlight, teaching people about earthing and grounding, and eating a ton of seafood to help charge up the mitochondria so that I make it through the decreasing quantum yield as it goes for the next couple months. I'm going to be entering Vitamin D Winter in less than 3 weeks here in St. Louis. So always plan out my summer runs to keep the batteries fully charged. So if you're potentially still interested in that, less than 24 hours left, send me a direct message and I'll send you the final email that gives you more details about that. For those that are joining later, this obviously is going to be recorded. I'll keep it in my Instagram feed for a while, but if you have questions, you can go to my website, redlightdoc.com. I have all my previous photo biomodulation talks up there and links to some of the affiliate red light companies that I've either personally had the devices or I know the owners and can answer questions if I have questions with them. So thank you guys for your time and attention tonight, and we'll see you again next Monday.